What if I told you that here in the United States, there's 110 million people that are at high risk? Would that concern you? Well, it should, because what we are hearing now is that these disasters could keep happening. But the real concern and the real worry is, where has the federal government been? Now they are deciding to step up, and I want to address what this means for you and I moving forward, and who should be the most concerned with all these disasters happening and potentially striking in their own neighborhood. So make sure you watch this entire video, and I'll explain exactly what is going on. All I ask is one thing. It takes 2 seconds. Go ahead, hit that like button if you enjoy these daily updates. And now let's begin. So if you are like most of the people in the United States, we're always concerned with what is happening. We're trying to consume the news and stay updated as to what is going on. But every once in a while, we turn on the news, we flip through social media, and we see something that has just struck, and it's a complete disaster. For instance, something like the wildfire in Maui. This was a huge disaster that just took lives of many people. We also remember that the San Diego flooding, this happened just the other day. This was highly concerning, but it didn't stop there. Okay, we see roads were flooded, people were displaced. This is going to continue to happen. What I can tell you at this time is FEMA was being bombarded and saying that they need to do more. They're not doing enough. Well, FEMA has decided to expand their disaster relief aid. Here's what we know. FEMA is going to expand disaster aid for extreme weather events, citing climate change. Now, let's just be honest. Do people that just lost their home because of a flood or a fire, do they care why they are going to get additional aid? No. They don't care if it was because of somebody made a mistake. For example, the National Forest Service, like down in New Mexico, or was it just a natural disaster? They don't care. What they care about is they are going to get something because they have been displaced. Somebody lost their life. They need to buy additional food. They need clothing. They need something. Because if you remember, and many people don't, but there was a major disaster down in New Mexico. And the disaster was actually 2 parts. First, compensation for New Mexico wildfire victims, it climbed past $14 million. This is as of August 4th, 2023. But guess what? According to the reports, $4 billion, okay, $4 billion was set aside to pay claims resulting from that 2022 Hermit's Peak Calf Canyon fire, where we know, okay, the director said more than 16,000 notices of loss have been filed, and her office has around $50 million worth of claims that they're processing. Well, guess what happened? Guess what just happened just the other day? That FEMA director, okay, Angela Gladwell, she resigned because of the whole catastrophe and the funding failure that happened down in New Mexico. $4 billion was allocated to that. $14 million was paid out as of this year. Okay, as of this past year. That's 2 years later, or 1 year later. That is just way too long. So one of the things that is happening is FEMA is deciding to overhaul their entire system. It says there FEMA is going to overhaul its disaster aid system after decades of criticism. It says the agency will offer upfront cash payments to disaster survivors and slash some of its infamous red tape. And I want to address what some of that infamous red tape is and why this is such a big deal. But first, before I do that, I want to explain why there are so many people at risk. Okay, so let's just look at this. This right here is the United States. Yep, I know it's pretty obvious. Well, in red, and I'll zoom in a little bit, but over here in red, and we can just come down here to San Diego, right? But if you look at this, in red, this is very high risk. The darker red is very high risk. The kind of light shade is relatively high. Then you got this yellowish shade, which is relatively moderate. Then you got this blue here, which is relatively low. This darker blue, which is very low. And then white where there's no rating. Okay, and then we can also come out all the way up here into Alaska as well. But I want to show you this. Okay, this is the chart that matters. The reason why is because one of the biggest concerns at this point, according to FEMA, is the coastal regions are the ones that are at the highest risk. And the reason for that is simple. Some say it's climate change. I'm not here to argue with those people. I'm not here to say it is or it isn't. All I know is yes, flooding has occurred multiple times in the California area. All right, we've been seeing flooding here in the Washington area as well. Right? But you look at this. I'll zoom in even more. Okay, look at this right here. This is the concern, is we are seeing a lot of red. Okay, and it doesn't stop there. Let's just look over here in Florida. Okay, you got Broward County, Miami-Dade. Okay, just this side of Florida, it's very high. That's the concern. Okay, now I can even come in here and I can change the risk to coastal flooding. Look at this. Okay, this is just the flooding, the coastal flooding. This is just that disaster right there. Okay, and you can get all this. This is from the FEMA website. You can go and get it. I could even change this to an earthquake. This is who has the highest risk of earthquakes, is over here on the West Coast. I could change it to something like a ice storm. Let's see where that is. There it is, over here on the East Coast. They're the ones that are most at risk of an ice storm. I could even change it to riverine flooding. Okay, you can see it down here. All right, I can even go as far as changing it to, let's say, tornado. Well, we know where that's going to be, down over here. So that's the concern, is FEMA now has to do something to stand up and provide for the American people. Well, guess what? They're going to do that. And I want to read you a little bit of this article. All right, so let's look at that. It says FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, which is FEMA, is expanding eligibility for government assistance following extreme weather disasters, citing the impact of climate change. Now, here's what we know, okay? And I want to read this to you. It says, in response and in a step towards equity, the regulatory changes in this rule seek to add efficiency in the delivery of assistance to survivors by simplifying processes, removing barriers of entry, and increasing eligibility for certain types of assistance under the program. It says the interim rule particularly noted that coastal areas face repeated flooding and storm surges. Well, we just saw that the other day with San Diego. San Diego got hit with a lot of rain, right? A lot of flooding. That's a problem. The property values in San Diego, expensive. To replace some of these homes is going to be difficult. Right now, San Diego already has a housing shortage. We have a housing shortage all over the United States. But then on top of a housing shortage, now all these people are being displaced. And on top of people being displaced in the United States, we also have an immigrant crisis where those people coming in do not have a place to sleep. They are essentially homeless. So again, crisis upon crisis upon crisis is going to be devastation for the American people. But let's keep reading this article. It says under the rule, FEMA will expand its disasters, which disasters are eligible for immediate cash assistance, and will also create a new displacement assistance program to cover short-term housing for disaster survivors who cannot return to their homes. Well, finally, they're changing the assistance program. Goes on to say, will also help to cover costs for survivors with costs that are not covered by their insurance. That's good. And it's going to remove a requirement to apply for loans from the Small Business Association or Administration before being considered for some types of assistance. Well, that's tough. When you have to apply for a loan just to get assistance. Now, you're probably thinking, well, this just came at the most opportune time, right? This is ideal because this just happened. this past Friday that this came out. Well, Friday was January 19th. And then today, or actually yesterday, San Diego gets hit with a storm, right? With flooding. So you're probably thinking, well, this is perfect. Came out the best time. Well, here's part of the problem. The changes aren't expected to take effect until March 22 as far as disasters are concerned. So after disasters that take place on or after March 22nd, 2024 are those that are going to be hit with these new rules. Prior to that, so like today and yesterday, all those people that were impacted and displaced because of the flooding in San Diego, well, sorry, you are not being taken care of. You will still have to go through all that red tape. But the good news is, in 2024, or the end of 2024, it should be much easier to get assistance from FEMA. The only problem is FEMA going to have the funding it needs in order to provide all this assistance? That is the next step. And that is something that the Biden administration cannot do without Congress. Congress is the only one that can allocate funding to FEMA in order to provide for all these people. Again, more than 1/3 of Americans, more than 110 million people are at high risk. And this is why FEMA has to do something or risk a complete disaster across the entire United States. So that's what we know at this time. Just wanted to fill you in on what's going on right now, but that is what we know. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.